what do you think we look like? What do you think human beings, or what comes out of human beings, ends up being in like 50 to 100 years?
Well, it all depends on, because all that we do is we adapt to the environments that we live in. And we are now radically changing our own environment technologically in all different ways. And so clearly you're seeing probably a speeding up of human evolution is probably happening.
Right.
I think it is.
Right.
Experts would be better able to say this than me, but I think it's quite. I mean, look, even in the last
technology, right?
Yeah, in the last 10,000 years, we're not the same as we were back then. So, and we've domesticated ourselves. It's just like you look at domesticated sheep as opposed to wild sheep. Well, domesticated humans as opposed to wild humans.
Right.
Before we started settling in large communities and societies, roughly 10,000 years ago. So we're going on a path. So what we're going to look like. The problem with our future is that every new technological leap you make, whether it's mastering the use of fire or stone tools, or now working at it, getting to AGI and whatever else we're going to get to, means that you become dependent on that for your species survival. Like, honestly, like once we've had fire for like a couple of 100,000 years,
Right.
it would be very difficult to probably for those people to survive without it.
Yes.
Because you become dependent on it. And then not only that, but the fact that you have fire means you have to develop all of these other technologies because we have to maintain the fire. We have to protect the fire. We have to find and process the right kinds of wood. Like all of that prompts further intellectual development. Same with stone tools and all that. So once you develop that, you have to maintain it. And now we're so deeply embedded in our technology. Can you imagine? Spain and Portugal just went without electricity for 5 hours last week. I have a sister who lives in Seville. And
Trust me, I live in Florida. I had to go through a lot of hurricanes. I know
there
it's like
exactly. So, but they were freaking out, man. They were not happy. So imagine if we had to go without electricity. Forget internet, just electricity.
Yeah, it sucks.
Well, that's even worse. For a week, 2 weeks, a month, forever.
It would suck.
It would more than suck because most people would probably not live.
Going back to this, this technology conversation and the evolution of human beings is really, it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. And it was interesting because I think Hal and Rogan touched on it a little bit on their conversation. But, one of the ideas that I've been throwing around is the idea of like this ESP telekinesis, having these senses that are not apparent in everybody, but they're kind of like extra. Some people have them more than other people. And especially when it comes to things like remote viewing and ESP. So like ancient human beings, right? Before we had the development of language, before we had the technology to record memories externally, and when we constantly were trying to avoid predators to stay alive, and before we had anything, like I'm sure we had some sort of extra senses that have atrophied since we've developed language, since we've developed computers. We don't have to memorize shit anymore. Everything's on a computer or an iPhone, and you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I feel like that is radically. We have senses that are radically have been diminished and atrophied over millennia.
My wife and I talk about this a lot. This is like one of our pet theories that we've been hashing around for a couple of years. Excuse me, I totally believe that that's the case. We actually are, the brain capacity of the human being today is less than it was among our ancestors, even more than 10,000 years ago. I think it's like the amount of a golf ball or, no, more than that. I think maybe a baseball amount of brain. We have less. We have a little bit less. And that doesn't mean that we're less intelligent. It just means that domestication has enabled us to need less because the brain's expensive. I mean, in terms of energy, like it's not free. And so you have to have a reason for it. It's got to provide an evolutionary benefit for you to use it. And very likely, I think that you're right. I think that's true. Like we've probably atrophied. And what that, of course, this is material that I'm just barely, I shouldn't even really talk about, but you hear people talking about microtubules in the brain and the ability to access quantum information in some way.
Yeah.
And I'm probably saying this wrong in countless ways, but essentially that we have the capacity to perceive some various forms of non-locality, things that are far away that logically you wouldn't think we were able to perceive. But hell, remote viewing proves that you can. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a fair theory or a fair notion that our ancestors did a better job at this than we do.
Mm. And another thing about, okay, so we were just talking about how like there's other Goldilocks planets, and there might be, there definitely are, we know of, that are really, really far away, but like we are so rare in this solar system. All the different species that exist on Earth, mm-hmm. I think so this is kind of getting into what Mike Masters explained to me. He's a anthropologist, and he was explaining to me there's over 2 million species of animals.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Isn't he the one who, am I getting my people mixed up? He came up with a paper about a year or two ago that got a lot of attention. And I should stop. I'm probably getting it wrong. Anyway, keep going, please.
Yeah. So he's an anthropologist,
Mm-hmm.
and he's wrote a bunch of books on his I think it's not his most recent one, but one of them is called the extraterrestrial model, and he basically explains, having a background in this stuff and evolution, is that there's 200 species of there's 2 million cataloged species on planet Earth. Out of the 2 million, 20 of them are hominids. Out of the 20 hominids, we are the ones that developed technology that was able to escape the Earth. So we are like 0.0001% of all species, human beings on Earth. So that is extremely rare for Earth, which is an extremely rare planet, being such a, having the moon the way it is, being this, having so much water and land, being inhabitable, teeming with life. So now let's go look at all the other Goldilocks planets that we know of that are so far away. How many of them have the same gravity, the same atmosphere, how many of them are water worlds or not? And what is the likelihood that those beings that evolve on that planet, that Goldilocks planet, are going to be exactly like the 0.00001%
right.
that ended up being human beings on this planet? So he's like, basically the case he made was it's virtually impossible for them to have 2 arms, two legs, upright walking hominids.
There I disagree. I disagree with that. I think respectfully, because I'm sure he knows what he's talking about. But no, I think that our body plan is probably not unique to us. And I think if you're going to, again, I think because what life does, life evolves and life adapts. And so if the necessary thing that you have to have is an ecosystem that can support enough diversity of life for this to happen. And yes, you need water and you need land. You need both. And so it's going to be very rare. Like, I completely agree with all of that. I think that's entirely right. But the fact that our body plan is an anomaly, I don't agree with that. I think our body plan is probably, I don't really, do we really truly understand what is the mechanism of evolution? What is it really? Is it truly just random mutation? Or is there something else going on? And I'm not going to pretend that I have that answer. But I think that somehow life, didn't Jeff Goldblum say this in Jurassic Park? Life finds a way. And I think that life does find a way through adaptation, through the need for survival, and luck, But like, this is, if you're going to engage in planetary domination of any capacity, honestly, I think this body plan of ours might just be the best way to do it. Because what you need is an ability to manipulate your environment. That's key. And so hands and fingers are perfect for manipulating environment. What's better than that? I don't know of anything that's been better. And then the thing is, once our, Australopithecine distant ancestors of 4 million years ago, or 3 million years ago, they realized, I could break this stone. Wow, this is really useful. So that encourages further intellectual development. Just even napping stones is like, that's a skill. So you're working cognitively here. And so I think adaptations, I don't think it's impossible that life would form adaptations similar to our own, that you would have humanoid beings that develop that way in other planets. You know, I just think that I remember as a kid reading like what certain scientists thought like life elsewhere would look like, and some of those ideas were kind of goofy when I look at them now, and I don't think they make a lot of sense because a body has to be efficient, and and so you're looking at all of these different factors that go into it, and it seems to me that bipedal, standing upright with a couple of extra hands to do your job, like that's quite useful, and I could imagine that happening elsewhere.
What do you got, Steve?
Oh, the crab species convergence.
Yeah, it's similar to what he was talking about. Like you have 5 different species that have independently grown crab-like bodies. That's just what works in the ocean for little creatures like that. Independently, unrelated.
Yeah, it's convergent evolution.
Yes. Yeah.
Which means basically species that are not related to each other can, due to the environments that they live in, develop very similar. Like, you know, bats can fly as well as insects can fly, and birds and that type of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I brought this up to Greer, he was explaining to me he believes it has something to do with morphic resonance. This theory by Rupert Sheldrake, to when it's like some sort of a quantum idea. It's a quantum theory essentially. So I guess one of the examples that Sheldrake used was a monkey on one side of the world discovers some sort of technology, figures out how to crack a coconut open with a rock or whatever, and at the same time, in this quantum field, the monkeys on the opposite side of the world figure out the same thing. Yeah. So he thinks that might tie into evolution between planets. He said this isn't just on Earth.
Yeah. Hey, I'd entertain that. I mean, you know, there's The Secret Life of Plants, which came out over 50 years ago, which talks about there's all different ways. We know that fungi under the ground are somehow, I don't understand it, can be a means of communication among plants.
Right.
All right. So how does that work? I don't know. So something like that could, sure.